goals of cybersecurity and the problems that Reliaquest specifically is looking to solve. And in a second webinar, we'll follow this up with a bit more about the Reliaquest specific solution gray matter. So I hope that everyone finds today's webinar to be both entertaining and as well as informational. So as I mentioned, today we're going to help level set. Some of you may be very familiar with cybersecurity. Some of you, this may be very unfamiliar grounds. And so we want to kind of help level set for everyone, just a bit of an introduction to what is exactly cybersecurity. What are the challenges that cybersecurity is looking to solve for organizations, for governments, for enterprises. And then we'll look to introduce Reliaquest as a company. What is Reliaquest about? What is our mission? Who are the types of companies that we serve? And then lastly, we'll talk about the specific challenges that Reliaquest looks to solve. So who will be speaking today? So my name's Seth Goldhammer. I am the VP of Product Marketing here at Reliaquest. And one second, we are going to be recording today's session. So I just want to let everyone aware that questions that you may have may be recorded so that we can provide this to others who are not able to participate in our live webinar.
Thanks, Seth. Real quick, just to build off of that, we will also be fielding questions through the chat function of the meeting. We'll give you time for questions at the end. Any questions that we don't get to, we will actually forward over to an email distro, and we'll continue to field those throughout the rest of the week here. But as Seth said, recording so that you guys can reference back to this webinar and for those that weren't able to attend today. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Abby. So my name's Seth Goldhammer. I'm the VP of Product Marketing here at Reliaquest. I have over 20 years in the network security, cybersecurity world, bringing products to market, both building kind of the industry's first network access control products, as well as kind of both traditional and more advanced kind of security solutions. Been with Reliaquest for actually just 2 months, and already feel I'm a very in-depth understanding of the capabilities and solutions and the types of challenges that we're providing those solutions for. Later today, or later this webinar, I'll be joined by Jason Pfeiffer, who brings in a wealth of experience as he is the VP of Product Management for Reliaquest and has been building Reliaquest's products. In a previous life, he has served in security leadership roles for large financial institutions. And so he kind of has lived and breathed this world in terms of helping to protect organizations from cyber threats. And happy to have him join us at Reliaquest, where we're now building solutions for those exact type of threats. So let's jump a little bit into the meat of today's webinar. And as I said, we're going to start with kind of some level setting. What is cybersecurity? For those who may only be kind of peripherally involved with or peripherally familiar with, kind of cybersecurity and what that means. In its essence, what we're talking about is how organizations, how governments, how enterprises, how do they protect themselves from cyber attacks? There are various types of cyber attacks, both from external sources and from internal sources. So we're talking about how these organizations are developing programs using technology and aligning people and process to that technology to ensure that they are fortified from different types of attacks that can occur. So let's dig a bit more into this. Why is cybersecurity important? Well, what we're looking to do is keep the enterprise's information safe. Enterprise's information, this could be, if you think about it, this might be intellectual property. If I'm building new types of technology, well, the way I'm developing that technology, that's my intellectual property. And other enterprises, other governments may be interested in stealing those plans so that they can build that same type of systems and bring them to the market ahead of me or in a cheaper way than I can. We also have lots of If I'm processing credit card information, I have my customer's credit card information. If I'm a hospital, I've got my patient's healthcare records. If I'm a website, I've got my users' account information, their logins, their passwords. So there's lots of different types of information that companies are generating or collecting that become very valuable to both for financial motivations, for a hacker to steal that information and then sell that, or find ways to monetize that information, or for other governments or companies to steal that information for their own use. So we have various types of motivations of hackers, whether it's financially motivated, politically motivated, or even, as we've seen, sometimes just for the laughs, meaning that they may just want to embarrass a company that has lax security controls. So all of these are reasons why cybersecurity becomes incredibly important in today's world. Now I'm going to ask you, here's where we get interactive. So if you click on the participants, the manage participants function of Ring Central, you'll see that there's a way to show your hand. And so I'm interested in, for you guys, a show of hands here, who has heard of the Equifax data breach? All right, seen some hands go up. So a few of you heard of this. So Equifax, yeah, thank you. So yeah, good majority of you heard about Equifax. This was a very large breach last year, impacting over $143 million. Equifax, they work with, essentially they deal with mortgage contracts. So as you're applying for a mortgage, applying for any type of kind of credit check, maybe purchasing a car, your information may go through Equifax. Well, they were compromised last year. There was several ways that the hacker was able to infiltrate Equifax, compromising user accounts within their environment, then looking for the type of databases that held sensitive information, and then they're able to identify those databases and then exfiltrate that information out, where they were able to get social security numbers, birth dates, addresses. You can read the list, but all of that information, those are monetized in black markets, where they can sell social security numbers, they can sell credit card numbers, they can sell driver's license numbers for other individuals who now look to use those for stealing those identities and leveraging those stolen identities for other types of schemes. So this is why, with such a large net, $143 million, and such a broad set of information, Equifax became very well known and impacted so many people, such as yourselves. All right, go ahead and lower your hands and then raise them again if you heard of Facebook being compromised. Yeah, a lot of us all are on Facebook. Over 50 million accounts were stolen. The account information, the email, the phone number. If you listed a phone number with Facebook, these were all compromised last year and discovered later on. And we'll talk a little bit about why it's hard to not it's hard to actually know that you've been compromised. You may not know this, but actually most organizations, they do not detect themselves that they were compromised. Most of the time, a majority of the time, it's actually law enforcement that informs a company that they've been breached. Now that sounds funny. Why would you not know that you've been breached? What happens is that the hacker or malware that's within your environment is stealing data. Law enforcement, they are monitoring a lot of these black market channels. So they see the sales of account information, of emails, of phone numbers. And so they'll see someone advertising, I have a large number of Facebook accounts. Well, when they see those types of sales being advertised in these black market IRC channels, web channels, etc., on the dark net, then they inform those organizations that they have been breached. So it's unfortunate, but it also shows the difficulty in recognizing data breaches even within your own organization, that most of the time it's actually law enforcement that's telling you that you've been breached. And I have to tell you, getting a call in the morning from the FBI saying that you have 50 million accounts out on the dark web, not a great way to start your day. All right, and then the last breach we're going to talk about. Who here, show of hands, go ahead and lower your hands for Facebook, and then raise your hands again if you were aware of Panera Bread being breached. So this was 37 million users, again, earlier last year. And you can see that there was a large number of details that were compromised out of Panera's database, including things like your ordering habits, your food preferences, because Panera Bread was creating information about their users that could help be leveraged in terms of better serving their customers, but that also becomes interesting to hackers, where they can now take that information. And again, they're either selling that or leveraging it themselves to monetize that information usually on dark web marketplaces. All right, thank you for your show of hands. So clearly, all of you were familiar with at least one of these breaches. So organizations, and you can see here, we've got very different types of companies. We've got, Facebook is a large web presence. Equifax is in the financial space. Panera Bread is a retailer. So we have really, cybersecurity is not a single type of organization. It doesn't matter if you're a large company or a small company. It's something that impacts all types of companies, and therefore is becoming more pervasive in terms of each organization, how they're approaching their cybersecurity strategies. So let's talk about those strategies. How do you secure, how do you perform cybersecurity? What does that mean? Well, let's start with something that may be more familiar to us. Well, how do banks secure their money? They use vault doors. They have security guards, they have security cameras. And if you think of other ways that banks use to protect money physically, go ahead and just type it into the chat. Cool. Yeah, some good ideas here. So very similarly, that's how cybersecurity is performed. Where cybersecurity, we are protecting data very similar to how we protect physical things. We have things like a vault door, where technology like firewalls, like intrusion detection or intrusion prevention systems, they are restricting who can access that sensitive data. So kind of like having doors that only some people have keys to, and can open and close those doors. We have technologies in place that can restrict what data and who can access to what. We also have things like security guards. We're kind of like having a bouncer. We can look at the type of information you're sending into that area, and if that type of information is appropriate. So that's where we can, we have technologies like malware prevention, endpoint protection, intrusion prevention, that are all looking at the type of data being sent. And if you look funny, they're not going to allow you in. So it's kind of like having a security guard or a bouncer. And then also we have things like security cameras. We are monitoring what data went where, who accessed what. So these are generally generating logs, audit logs, and those audit logs can be reviewed. So who accessed what and when. Each time we log into a website, that's being logged. So through the ability to monitor both the network traffic as well as the log information, we have a good recording, if you will, of what has happened and when. Now, the issue with maybe that last part of monitoring is if you think about all the information that's created in terms of all that network traffic, all those logs, and most of the time it's very innocuous, meaning that most activities are allowed. They're sanctioned. So there's a lot of data that we're generating, but it's only very specific. I should say that they're in all that log data, in all that network traffic. It's going to be very difficult to see through all that noise. Information that actually can help us recognize that someone did something that they weren't supposed to, especially if they're trying to hide their tracks. And this is why it takes many organizations a long time to detect that they've been breached, or they're finding out through some sort of third party, which kind of leads us to cybersecurity as an industry. There are more security-related jobs available right now than qualified applicants, meaning that organizations are now looking for, again, it's any and every type of organization across industries, small and large, they're all looking for people to help join the company who can help them in what are the right technologies that they should be implementing within their environment. Who's going to manage those security technologies? Who's reviewing the logs and the network traffic to look for activities that may be suspicious? So that all takes skill sets that not everyone has. And so with all of these organizations now realizing that they are a target, they're all looking for people to help them, and that's created a shortage of jobs, of people to fill those jobs. In fact, you can see here that Cisco, who's a large infrastructure provider, network infrastructure provider, they estimated about 3 million people, that there's more than 3 million jobs being requested than people to fill those. Just gonna pause here for a second. And yeah, just if you do have questions, please use the chat feature within Ring Central to be able to ask your questions. So that way we can get to them either right at the time you have that question or at an appropriate point that we can pause. All right, I'm gonna pause and see if my colleague, Jason, has joined us.
Hey, good morning, Seth. Good morning, all. As Seth alluded to earlier, my name is Jason Pfeiffer, the Vice President of Product Management for Reliaquest. I spent my entire career, 20 plus years, doing cybersecurity for companies like Lockheed Martin. I ran global cybersecurity for PwC, a Big Four accounting firm. So I've been doing cyber for a long time, and want to spend a little bit of time talking about the organization of Reliaquest and how we see the industry and some of the challenges that we see specifically with our customers and the enterprise today. So we go to the next slide. Talk a little about who we are and what we do, right? And our mission is to really fortify the world's most trusted brands against cyber threats. And we do that through our innovative technology platform called Gray Matter to help companies and enterprises identify threats earlier and respond faster. Threats are relentless, they're never ending, to Seth's earlier points, and so it's all about speed. I think it was General Keith Alexander, the former head of the NSA, who said it, that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when a company's going to get breached. And so it really comes down to this, being able to identify and respond to those threats faster so the impact of the business is minimized. As an organization, we operate with 450 employees in 3 U.S. locations, Tampa, Las Vegas, and Salt Lake City, and we also have an international location located in Dublin, Ireland. A little bit about a company overview perspective, just to give you some perspective on our customers. We've got over 200 plus customers with a 97% retention rate, which is huge and very impactful from an organization perspective. Once we are able to attract a customer and land a customer, we're able to keep them with us. And that is big in this industry, as there's a lot of different organizations popping up all the time, given the amount of I guess, news and press and things like that and spotlight that's been on cybersecurity, probably more so than ever over the last 3 to 4 years. Our average contract length is about 3 years, and our average customer, just to give you some perspective on size, their annual revenue is about $10 billion. So if you think about the size of the company that's got $10 billion in annual revenue, we're not dealing with small mom and pop type shops or small medium businesses. We're dealing with large enterprises such as Southwest Airlines, Abercrombie and Fitch, Darden Restaurants, and St. Jude Children's Hospital, just to name a few. We've been named by Fortune as one of the best workplaces in technology in 2019, 2018, 2017. One of the Technology Fast 500 by Deloitte in 2018. They haven't released 2019 yet. And then, one of the top company cultures from a best company perspective. So all those things are great points to help organizations understand how we're able to keep our customers as well as our employees, and what we're doing to make sure that we're providing the best and optimal workplace for folks that are helping, secure their enterprises. We've got about 450 plus employees right now with a 91% retention rate. So even as Seth alluded to, the skill shortage and whatnot, we're still able to keep and attract top talent. And that is huge in a space where the talent is in such high demand. And we do that through a lot of the things that I named above around being a best place to work, having a top company culture, and all those things allow us to attract the talent rather, and keep them with Reliaquest, which is huge for our customers because it drives more consistency on the folks who are working with them on a day-to-day perspective. So let's talk a little about the industry and some of the challenges as we see it from a Reliaquest perspective. And Seth gave a great overview of the industry as a whole and at large, and we'll talk a little bit more about how we see the industry and the challenges based on where Reliaquest sits with the kind of security ecosystem. So we're seeing an alarming trend kind of emerging and becoming more and more impactful over the last 3 to 5 years. And it all stems down to that too many tools and too many technologies out there where are supposed to give you more visibility into your environment, more understanding of where threats could be hiding and lurking, and more control over those threats and abilities to stop or prevent them is actually counterintuitive. It's becoming counterproductive. Organizations' environments are getting much more difficult to manage. They're growing at exponential rates. They're extending to the cloud through software as a service, infrastructure, platforms as a service, things like AWS and Azure and Google Cloud Platform, as well as big applications that are all SaaS-based like Workday and Salesforce and those types of things. So their environments are expanding out of what was historically all within a self-contained data center out to being in multiple and many data centers all over the world. The mobile workforce is becoming a huge differentiating factor for organizations as we all got our iPhones and iPads and Androids and everything else. So the old perimeter and sticking a firewall in front of everything doesn't really apply to the threats and to the environments that our organizations are dealing with. And so to try to manage all those different types of threats that they're dealing with, and as the perimeter or the protection barrier around organizations is expanding and almost eroding to that extent, they're adding more and more technologies trying to keep up with all the latest threats that come out, whether it's things trying to mine Bitcoin or to steal your intellectual property, as Seth alluded to, or steal credit card information about folks like yourselves. They're adding more and more technologies to try to prevent and detect those things, but the problem is they're adding so many more technologies that they're not getting more visibility. They're not able to kind of keep up with the growth. And more of those technologies that come out there, they're also alerting and identifying more things of interest, creating a huge uptick in how many different alerts are out there that they need to respond to. And we found that 43% of enterprises are unable to act on less than or more than 25% of the alerts they have in their environment to begin with. So if you think about all three of those different kind of pillars between the environments becoming more complex, you've got more and more technologies out there, and they're creating much more noise, if you will, and more alerts. There's no way for these organizations to keep up with that. They're just constantly trying to bail water out of a boat that's sinking that's just never ending. And so that's kind of led us to the ultimate conclusion that too many tools is equaling less visibility and control. And to give you some perspective on the number of tools out there, we pulled the next slide down, if you can go to the next slide, Seth. From an industry consortium, this is the current landscape of what it looks like from different security technologies broken out by the different domains of cybersecurity. As you can see here, and you're not going to have to memorize this in any way, shape, or form, there's a massive amount of technology coming out there every day. There's a massive amount of money being pumped into the cybersecurity ecosystem to try to deliver and build new technologies, whether it's from large banks or venture capitalist funds. But it's growing exponentially. So as our customers and the chief information security officers of organizations are trying to figure out how to best protect their organizations, they're having to flood through all these different types of technologies, trying to figure out how to make them all work, how to integrate them all together, and how to get optimal visibility and control over the environment.
Hey, Jason, just to add on to your point here, in many of those breaches, the breaches that I showed and breaches that occurred, unfortunately, all the time in the investigations, the alarms recognizing that suspicious activities, the activities that were aligned to that breach. In many cases, there were security tools that actually did recognize and alarm on that suspicious activity. But as you look at this page, if I've got technologies across many of these different areas, the issue isn't that the alarm went off. The issue is that I have so many alarms going off, so many different security tools that are trying to get my attention. And many of those alarms are not for illegitimate activity, but for actually legitimate activity. So I have so many false positives, so many alarms that actually aren't telling me about something that is concerning. And so it's that noise, not just all that log and network audit information, but now even just the alarms themselves. There's just too many alarms to be able to investigate, to be able to troubleshoot and recognize the root source of. So I end up missing those alarms that actually were trying to tell me about the thing I needed to take action on.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's a very great point. So organizations today are really focused with, or provided with two different types of solutions, right? And both of those solutions fall short. And their options today are really they can outsource. So they can use an MSSP or managed security services provider, or MDR, which is managed detection and response, or co-managed provider. And with those solutions, they're still limited to a black box environment. They can't get all the information when they need it and how they need it. They're very singularly focused and not looking at the entire ecosystem, but looking at just point technologies. And they're delivering consistency, but there's no evolution. They're not able to evolve with these businesses as the businesses are evolving, as the businesses are moving to the cloud, or becoming more mobile, becoming more on demand. These types of approaches don't give them that ability to evolve with the business. So organizations are stuck from that perspective. On the inverse, you've got the do-it-yourself perspective. Organizations are like, no, we're going to do this all in-house. We're going to build this massive team, right? But that ultimately leads to a fragmented environment. They've got data in all sorts of different places and technologies that they can't get access to. They've got information overload, to the earlier points around. There's data everywhere. There's alerts firing all the time. They're constantly trying to fight fires, different alerts, different business priorities, and everything else. So it allows that organization to evolve and to try to meet the demands of the business, but there's no consistency. They aren't able to get to all the alerts. They aren't able to identify the highest priority issues from a security perspective. They're constantly fighting fires and trying to do what the business needs, but they're not able to provide that consistency around the clock to make sure that everything's being integrated as intended, that everything's being actioned as it should be. And so they're constantly in this firefighting battle, trying to keep up with a massive load and the latest threat of the day, and they're not able to drive that consistency across the board, leaving a lot of gaps, leaving a lot of holes.
Hey, Jason, we have a great question here around just what black box means in this context.
That's a great question. So black box in this context means that these outsourced providers are basically saying, oh, send us all your data, send us whatever data you have, and send it over to our special black box technology that the customer can no longer see. So at that point, the customer is giving this outsourced provider all their information and relying solely on that black box provider, that MSSP, to actually tell them when something goes bad. So they have no visibility to check and balance or verify what's actually happening. They're solely relying on these types of providers to make sure that they're telling them when things have actually gone wrong. And so again, there's no balance. They're not able to validate things on their own. They're only allowed to see the information that provider specifically allows them to. So there's no transparency from that perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. And a reminder to everyone, if you are entering in questions into the chat function, go ahead and send it to everyone. You can change the to line to everyone so everyone sees your questions. If you do have questions, please do enter them into the chat function here. We do want to make sure that you're kind of equipped to understand not only the cybersecurity space, but specifically the problems that Reliaquest is providing solutions into. And really this slide here is really helping to capture that problem space that Reliaquest is uniquely addressing. Now, one question that came in is just, why would an organization choose to outsource at all? Doesn't that seem, wouldn't they be concerned just letting someone else perform all their security functions? So I'll take a stab at that, and I'm sure Jason has thoughts on this as well. As we talked about earlier, it's difficult to find kind of skilled security personnel to hire for every single organization. And so some companies, let's say I'm a mattress manufacturer. I make really good mattresses that are really comfortable, and I serve a specific need for my types of customers. I take credit card information over my website. We may have some stores that I'm taking credit card information in. So I have valuable information that a hacker would love to take. I don't know anything about cybersecurity. I know how to make mattresses really well. And so looking at an outsourced provider, a managed security service provider who all they do is security and that is their level of expertise, that now starts to look pretty attractive to me, where instead of trying to really hire and bring in and build up all of that capability within my mattress manufacturing company, I'm going to go ahead and let someone who has all that expertise in and let them do that for me. But as Jason alluded to, that also has some ongoing vulnerabilities because I've completely outsourced my my security services. I'm not really able to help in terms of developing my own security program and the needs of the security program specifically for me, the manufacturer of mattresses. And so that's where this black box environment, as Jason talked about, kind of the cookie cutter approaches that managed services generally provide, they're going to disalign to my needs. And I've also put myself in a disadvantage where I haven't developed any capabilities of my own. So I don't have a real ability to input into that program maturation. Any more comments maybe on that, Jason?
No, I would just say kind of one of my favorite sayings, right, to tie back to kind of business and business school and all that is like, it's people tend to stick to their core competencies, right, as a business. And if security is not that, then they need to find someone else to help them to do that because that's just not what they're good at. It's not what they're going to solicit expertise in. I'd further that by saying one of my favorite sayings is, you can't outsource accountability, right? And so they can still outsource the management, the oversight, and insights into things to get that expertise. The business is still ultimately accountable for that. So that is just kind of one of the pitfalls of just over relying on someone to do that for you.
Yeah, so if I have all these disparate technologies, I have data scattered all over. As you can see here, the two ways to try to really create efficiencies in leveraging all that disparate information and ensuring I'm really getting the use of those security technologies aligned to what I was hoping to get out of them. The two solutions really don't really end up, as the slide says, they fall short, where managed services is not really allowing me to tap into all of those information sources. It's not really helping me with an efficiency perspective of detecting threats and recognizing threats, and I'm not really able to evolve my security program. And of course, if I'm trying to just do it all myself, as Jason alluded to, that may not be my core competency, so I'm trying to build up that core competency, but now I'm trying to perform all that administration, the management of all those tools on my own. I'm trying to integrate those all on my own. And I'm trying to build all the processes to recognize threats and respond to those threats, the investigation process, and the response process. I'm trying to build all that myself. And so what we've seen, and the reason why we keep seeing breaches in the news, is that either of these approaches is ultimately not meeting to companies' needs. And so in our next webinar, we'll be talking specifically about Reliaquest solution, the product, the capability that we've brought to market to address this specific need around really gathering all of this disparate information and creating the efficiencies from a workflow perspective, leveraging that existing security infrastructure to be able to meet to the needs of detection and response. All right, got a few more questions that have come in here. Jason, I don't know if you've seen those, if you're looking to answer one of them.
Yeah, let me take a look here. So the question is, taking a look back at the previous slide, I said our RQ has a 97% retention rate, but what are some of the reasons why companies haven't renewed with RQ? That's a great question. It really depends on the organization. There's been some organizations who've been acquired by other organizations that have larger, more mature security programs or contracts with other providers already in place, and so that's probably the most typical one. Sometimes there just hasn't been an exact fit or match based on what the organization's trying to do and with how we actually, our approach actually does that. So sometimes there's that mismatch as well. So it really depends on the company, the scenario. We've also had other companies where financially they just not have the greatest year, or revenues are down, or things like that. So they've had to shore up and tighten budget, and accept some more risk to their business, and ultimately try to do with what the resources they have in-house. And that's been another kind of driver as well. So we've got the same thing twice. The most frequent is probably the acquisition by other companies. But sometimes it is just a lack of budget and funding going forward.
Now, I'll take the next question here, and Jason, feel free to add on. What is a typical business case for Gray Matter built on? Is it avoiding the cost of a cyber attack or reducing the cost of current processes for preventing a cyber attack? Our goal is really to help improve an organization's security model. What that means is, I define a security model by the people they have in place. What are the processes that have been developed for them to leverage the security technologies they have, ultimately with the goal of detecting and responding to threats. Because that's the ultimate goal of, as we saw with cybersecurity, is to keep that organization protected from cyber threats. So if our focus is on improving that security model, a byproduct of that is going to be that they have much more visibility. They have much more coverage of threats coming into their environment, and they have a more efficient process to be able to respond to those threats. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's an or in terms of your question. I think that we are both allowing an organization to have more confidence, and they have metrics to actually help showcase why they have more confidence that they will now detect and respond to the right alarms at the right time for their organization. So yeah, the cost factor there is really twofold. Anything more you might add to that, Jason?
Yeah, I would just kind of state that, you can't really avoid the costs, so to speak. There's different ways to manage risk, but I think it comes down to just the maturation and the speed of that, and how fast you can mature the organization and how well you can sustain that. And, if you look at the DIY perspective, right, and the skills shortage, right, how do you maintain staff, and how do you keep staff engaged, and so on and so forth. So, when staff leaves, it has impacts on organizations. And so getting that consistency is what they want. They need to be able to deliver consistent outcomes. And just because they lose staff or other things happen in the environment, they're still expected by their regulators, their auditors, their stakeholders and customers, et cetera, to still have and deliver a secure outcome. So there's a lot of different reasons. It depends on the business.
Sure. And now there's a question around kind of the company culture of Reliaquest. I'll answer it kind of very quickly, but Abby and Jason, who've been around much longer, can provide, I'm sure, a much more in-depth answer, but maybe be new to the team, provide kind of a little bit of a unique perspective here. Reliaquest, serving in cybersecurity, it's definitely a fast-paced organization across kind of really all aspects of the company. It's also, even though Reliaquest, we have fun, there's lots of opportunities for fun activities, with teams and with the larger organization. We also recognize that, our customers, cybersecurity is incredibly important. And so we take that mission very seriously, and we engage with our clients in a way that really kind of elevates to that level of importance that they have within their security programs.
Definitely. I would build off of that a little bit. So a lot of what we look for in our employees is kind of similar when we're working with our customers, right? We act as one team with our customers. So there's a level of kind of like, I don't know, partnership, right? We act as a true extension of their team. So we try to bring them into our culture, which is, very fast paced. We, are highlighting attitude, energy, and effort in all areas of the business across the organization. If you can have those three things and you can work within those three things, and you're typically working within the culture. But agreed, definitely fast paced. It's a culture of accountability. That's another one of our core values. So holding each other accountable, working hard, doing right by the customer, but also by Reliaquest is very important to us. So we make sure that we are transparent, we provide feedback, we want what's best for each other and the personal and professional growth here at Reliaquest, but the growth of the company and ultimately, the evolution of our customers' security environment and security posture over time. So we kind of layer in some of those culture-related things with our relationship with them, and I think that definitely is kind of its own selling point. Usually when customers come on site and visit, Reliaquest, and they do the Innovation Center, and they meet people across the organization from different teams, it's usually a combination of that aha moment in the Innovation Center when they actually get a demo of our services and our product, but also the people. They always mention it was awesome to meet you guys in person. It just clicked for me when I came on site. I get it now. I see, why you guys are growing so quickly and have a high customer and employee retention rate. You just feel the energy, and you kind of feel like one team from the start. So I think that definitely speaks to the culture as well. And I don't know if these two questions were related, but the selling style for this product, our selling style in general is uncovering pain points and relating back the solution to their specific problem, right? So making sure that we're asking the right questions, that we're digging into what keeps them up at night, what are their exact pain points, because although we've talked through some of the pain points at the enterprise level, not all of them experience every single one of them, right? Some may be a little bit more than others, so we make sure to tailor our kind of sales process and pitch to those pain points specifically. So I don't know if that answers that side of the question too.
There's a next question I can shed some insight into, which is, so is Reliaquest like an Iron Dome, love the term, or missile defense system, kind of surround the current infrastructure, or do you come in and improve current infrastructures, or both? I think the best way to answer that simply would be like both. We come in and help, improve their current missile defense system, to use this terminology. We come in to help kind of optimize key parts of their environment, their infrastructure, their security controls and protections. And we also bring our own technology to bear to help make it all work better together. So, that's why I would say both based on this question.
Any other questions from people? Love the questions that have been coming in. If you do think of a question that you just weren't able to answer in the webinar, you can continue to email us through the week. We'll continue to answer any questions you have. And again, this is the first of two webinars. Our second webinar, we will delve much more into the gray matter solution and the capabilities we're bringing to market to address these particular challenges that we went over in today's webinar.
We grab something to eat?
Yep.
All right. There was one more question that says
Webinar.
you could go on mute. That would be fantastic. But the next question is, not concerned about price yet. As far as cutting costs and saving money from threats, what is the cost savings in percentile points compared to the company's older methods, if they had an older method? Trying to make sure I understand this right. So not concerned about how much we actually price the solution at, but you think about cutting costs and saving money as it pertains to managing threats. what is the cost savings from a point perspective compared to older methods? I'll take a stab at this, Seth, you can feel free to tag in, but I would say it depends, right? And like, I hate to say that all the time, but every business is different, right? They're all unique in their own way and what drives them and what motivates them. And so if you look at it from a pure outsourcing perspective on the left-hand side of this slide, like it could be fairly inexpensive to have this method, but at certain times you get what you pay for. And so they may have this black box MSSP provider, could cost them X dollars of money a month or a year, but they have very little visibility and control into that information, but it's probably much cheaper. And then the do-it-yourself model is probably one of the more expensive models in this because you're having to staff people. Resources are expensive. You've got to have real estate for resources. You've got to have health benefits and everything else. So that becomes more and more of a challenge for just bringing on more resources, more headcount, et cetera. Then you've also got additional technologies you may have to purchase and everything else to get all the capabilities that you're looking for. And depending on the skill sets you need too, there's, with 3 million job shortages right now, the cost of hiring additional people in this environment is increasing by the hour. And so trying to deal with keeping people, keeping them retained, giving them environments where they can actually grow and they feel challenged, as well as getting additional technologies and supporting those technologies all have an ongoing cost. So I don't think there's an exact points or percentage perspective when it comes down to price that's different for every business and the current model they're in, and what ultimately is their approach and level of acceptable risk. If they don't care about cyber risk and they just want something to check the box, they're probably going to go with the left-hand outsource option and try to have somebody else do it, and it's going to be fairly cheap. If they want to do it themselves, it's definitely going to be much more expensive depending on to the level of maturity and competence they want it done. And they can do it themselves at a very grandiose level and have hundreds of people. If you think about JP Morgan Chase, I think their cybersecurity budget's close to $700 million. So close to a half to a quarter of a billion, $750 million. And you could think about some other smaller organizations that may do it themselves, but they may have 2 people. So it really just depends.
Yeah, I would add to that certainly there's metrics that we can that we've calculated in terms of reduced cost of ownership, the increased amount of threat detection we provide to a customer, such as that. And actually, you can find those right on our website. But generally, we're not selling the solution in terms of an ROI, where we're saying, well, within the first 6 months, we're saving you X amount of dollars against our price of Y amount of dollars. Our sales strategy is generally around just that increased visibility, threat coverage, and process efficiency to meet to the security goal of ensuring that you really are detecting, responding to threats. So that becomes kind of the overarching kind of message in our sales strategy. Great. Well, I at this point, I don't see any other questions coming in. We can wait maybe just 60 seconds here to see if anyone is furiously trying to type in a question at the moment. Otherwise, we'll give you some time back and look forward to our next webinar where we can dig much more into our solution set and capabilities. Amy, any last any last tips for everyone before we close today's webinar? All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I want to thank you for all your time, great questions, and for your attention. And look forward to rejoining you on our next webinar. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.